Kafi, Volume 7 of 8, compromises wills, testimonies, oaths. I've leveled the following criticism about other volumes before, but between 13,112 and 13,113, between 13,184 and 13,185, between 13,196 and 13,197, between 13,206 and 13,207, between 13,214 and 13,215, between 13,267 and 13,268, between 13,254 and 13,255, between 13,268 and 13,269. There are some untranslated parts, and really they should translate all these things. So 14,444 tells us that it's permissible that if you fear for your belongings or your life, then you can swear. An oath. 14,417 is that if a person swears and then breaks it, and therefore there has to be expiation, and they're unable to do the fasting to make up for that, they pay two mud for the people, the person who fasts on their behalf. 14,385 says that it's only proper to take an oath by God, and 14,386 lets us know that it's, if one needs be, you could have a person swear by the scripture that was revealed unto the prophet that that they claim, like a Jew swearing by the Torah. Not the Torah of the Jews, the Torah of Moses. He phrased it like that. 14,381 reminds us not to say ignorant things like, no, but may your adversary be it. 14,331, did I say 14,330? 14,381, because that was the last one I talked about, but this one is 14,331. And this is that you can't swear to make something lawful unlawful, or something lawful something unlawful to be unlawful, so you can't switch that. That's called bid'ah, but you can't change the lawful or unlawful status of something by making oaths. And let us remember that the taqiyya that's stereotypical, it's not that you're avoiding criminal penalty or anything like that. It's that there's persecution. So let's not get confused about that one. And one's actually fearing the physical harm or even their life being lost, that sort of thing. 14,324 tells us that the throne of God vibrates at the mentioning of those who don't know something, saying that God knows the answer. 14,296 reminds us that it's not always necessary to ask a lot of specifics when it comes to things. When making a judgment, you judge based on what you've been told in terms of that the Muslims, if they say something in terms of guardianship, marriage, inheritance, slaughtered animals, and testimonies, they're considered as a default that, they should be taken at their word. Daniel the prophet separated the witnesses from each other. And of course, the testimony of a person who testifies against somebody falsely, that can be likewise turned against. And, if you've forced somebody to consume intoxicants in order to, now, forced, that's a difference, forced, or even coerced well, in this case, it was somebody who was forced, somebody forced themselves upon somebody after they were drunk, but they made the person get drunk, and I'm not sure what's meant by that using English because of how people speak, but yeah, that she was the one punished for the fornication, not the young woman that this woman was saying, uh-oh, my husband might want to marry her, so I better, so that she would be forced to pay the dowry that such a woman would get. So that's part of the penalty for that sort of thing. But there were a couple people killed that, held the person down and, as death penalty, that sort of thing. 14,285 also pertains to the case of a rape, but actually this one was about there wasn't a rape, and Umar, the second caliph, was going to have a man punished when this woman just took egg whites on herself, but Ali had the sense to say, well, hold on, and they put water on it, and they put boiling water on it and found out that the mark on her clothes was from eggs. And the other previous narration we talked about also refers to Ali and Umar and, false accusations of a group of women, and but referring to the judgment, they paid the dower, but referring to the judgment of Daniel and Umar was, corrected by the teaching of Ali in regards to his narration, because, he accepted that. 14,282 regards an old man who accused a boy of theft and had him brought for judgment under Prophet Dawood. And it turns out that he had killed and stolen from the boy, and the boy was just taking back in regards to that. So the old man was executed, and the boy was, not blamed for that sort of thing. 14,249 says that we should not seek out the judgment of the wrongdoer if we can, but seek out those who are believers, people who actually narrate from the innocents. Prophet Muhammad and, those who were continuing his legacy, basically. And 14,228 says that when it comes to government, it's only fitting for a prophet, somebody who's carrying out the will of a prophet, and a wicked person. So you avoid it, lest in some area you're not going to carry out the prophetic commands. Now, let us not confuse this with the Christian idea of theocracy, where it seemed like everybody emotionally feels like, whatever, and they were switching back and forth from one ruler to the next. But as the last narration that we talked about goes over, we are getting into the area of how, that even if you're getting the right judgment, whatever you get out of getting the right judgment, if you're pursuing the wrong course for it, 14,215 says that the person giving testimony should bear their face. Now, if a woman is recognized without that by everybody present, then that's okay. Or everybody who's involved in making judgment and whatnot. 14,192. It's not right that the people giving the call to prayer are offering the ritual prayers should be paid for such. So obviously, if we, if we try to, if there's, but obviously people, as I think I've mentioned elsewhere, is that it's permissible to pray behind someone of a different sect or whatever, as long as you're praying the right prayer or praying a prayer that is right. Yeah. So you don't worry about that sort of thing. But if you have the option between one place and the other, and here's somebody not getting paid to lead the prayer, then, 14,183. A person who is a pessimist, an antagonist, or a sinful one, that sinfulness dominates their character, as we've seen in certain examples when it comes to honesty and that sort of stuff. Unless we see signs of repentance, then those are the testimonies not to accept. So I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. politicians. I want to see if there's other reasons to accept what you people are claiming. 14,177. Well, not all politicians, but yeah. It's not harmful to testify on the behalf of a family member in a good cause. 14,166 says that if it couldn't be witnessed by men, nothing wrong with having the woman's testimony. And some matters, this like childbirth and stuff, this becomes like the standard. 14,164 brings back the whole that it's in terms of virginity also, of course, their own virginity. Perhaps what they witnessed of a companion. 14,132. If there is a false testimony given, and, there's a group of people, well, the penalty that resulted, that's due on the person who retracts their testimony. And the others group together to pay blood money. 14,100, but only that portion that they are, like 3/4 in the case mentioned here. 14,150 is again something not translated. Muhammad Sarwar should have translated everything. It shouldn't be up to him to consider relevance, or maybe it's best to talk about the rulings that have been based on this. So, children can present testimony, but their first words are accepted, not the ones that, after they've been trained with the testimony. And that's sort of the thing with everybody to a degree, is that if they've been practiced with their testimony and their testimony's changed, then yeah. Now, if they forgot details, just like the thing about the women's testimonies, the Quran does not say that a woman's testimony is worth half that of a man. It gives them an option that if a group of them, one woman forgets some stuff, another woman reminds, and That's it. It's not, so the next narration says that too. But it becomes more so the case as 153, when they talk about reasoning can comprehend, and when he becomes mature, then it's right and permissible. Oh, well, if he testifies about something when he gets older, about what happened when he got younger, okay, that makes sense. 14,154, confirms that in a little bit different of a way. But they can testify when they're children. They don't have to wait till they're of childbearing age and considered fully accepted in terms of that sort of thing. And narration 14,156 says that the slave can testify. In America, we have the prison system, which is about slavery. That's really what it's about. But some people will keep their slaves from testifying. And then that 14,158 says it's not right to be somebody who rejected well, I mean, it says, yes, they should accept the testimony of a slave. 14,129 is much in the same regard as one of what we mentioned earlier, that if a person makes a false testimony and one person recants, that person should pay the portion equal to their segment in the group of the testimony. 14,115. That the choice whether or not to present a testimony depends on whether you were the witness or whether you heard something secondhand. You heard about something, then you can say something or not say something. But if you've actually witnessed, then it becomes a duty to testify. 14,105 talks about the first check that was ever made. Jibril Mikael took a note from Adam about him donating 50 years of his life to Dawood, and he forgot about it, and then it was claimed. It's like, well, I thought I had some life left. Yeah, well, you did, but you donated it. So 13,293 to 14,103. Oh, I forgot to say between. Those are ones admitted. This is why this volume is the thinnest of the series. So he should have translated those ones. 13,242 talks about the hermaphrodite. And so as a child, they would determine, by the urination, which organ it urinates out of and which is stronger, if they're male or female. And as an adult, they would avoid checking that way, period. So one of the things that, they would figure out a way by a mirror or something like that that wouldn't look at the person. They'd check it before the person uncovers whether they're, male or female. So the testimony in that regard. So people knew about these, like the physical issue. I'm not talking about modern gender identity issues. This is really nothing to do with that. but they can look at the pattern that the urine forms when the person, and they turn their backs on the person to be sure. There's nothing about a mirror, by the way, but the view is blocked nonetheless. The view is blocked. 13,236 lets us know that if there's not the distinction, then their inheritance and such is, well, they're considered both male and a female. You know, let God judge, because at that point you really don't know if they have multiple organs and they're all working. 13,232. A newborn inherits if its crying has been heard. 13,228. If it moves, then it has. 13,215 lets us know that a person who, you know, they die in apostate, their Muslim children are the ones who inherit. And between that and the narration before it is stuff that's not being translated here. As much as it's not directly relevant to our lives in terms of we're going to have to repeat these rulings, let's, you know, it's important information to have out there, because, I mean, some of it, obviously, that has been translated wouldn't be included by that logic, but he has. 13,209. Slaves and free don't inherit each other. I mean, it's obviously that a slave doesn't really have the property rights. Certain governments and certain individuals have given certain permissions. Between 13,206 and 13,207. Again, between 13,196 and 13,197. 13,185 to 13,196 involves inheritance between people of other faiths. And this starts with mentioning that they're not to inherit from us, but we can inherit from them. And there's it's not just people of the book, of other scriptures that have, you know, been corrupted. It's also the people without, that are just following the ethnic ways. You know, people call them pagan. And 13,100. And sometimes there's marriages like there's a Christian wife, so they see if the children are going to become Christian, and it can be put in a trust. 13,191. And I was thinking there was something else, not just the legacies. There's a sternness. But let's just call it the right-of-way to make it sort of understandable what's being said in a more universal way. I'm moving through this quick, so excuse me. 13,179 regards a murderer. And so the murderer does not receive, you know, the inheritance as such. And one of the things about that elsewhere is included is the idea that, you know, you can't be compensated for your crime. You know, if you've committed a crime in order to get inheritance or whatever, then, you know, whatever result is not upon you. You know, you don't have rights over that. Between 13,184 and 13,185, between 13,112 and 13,113. I wish he included all that sort of stuff. 13,057 says that the inheritance gotten from slaves, that wouldn't be put a stop to. If it was people who had ordained shares, they got their ordained shares. If it wasn't people with ordained shares and it was, distributed among them. And like everything, the guidance is, the Quran comes first. Everything that the Quran says is the rule, that's the rule. And certainly this is the continuation. It's not that the A'imma are supposed to be coming up with their new rulings and changing the religion, the calendar, that or anything about the religion. It's that they're supposed to be continuing the religion. So 13,040 says that when a man becomes ill and there's a divorce and there's that waiting period that has gone by, well, the woman inherits. Even if that waiting period has come to an end, that can be up to a year. So there is a limit to it. 13,027 says that the inheritance will go to a daughter if there's a daughter, and the parents won't get the share if that's the three people that are left. 13,018 explains why women have a different inheritance share. It's their needs are not their obligation in terms of, the spending on them. They don't pay the blood money. I mean, that's not obligatory on them. And they're not obliged to pay there's no obligation for them to go out to war. 13,003 reminds us that the shares are 6. The basic inheritance shares are not more than 6. 12,749 includes a statement to remember, to include, confirming one's faith, and that one's inheritance shall be based on the Book of God. And that it's more elaborate than that. One of the things is that we are supposed to be of those who, we don't believe in intercession, except those, we don't call on people to intercede for us. That is an automatic thing, because they have trusted the most merciful. Now, 12,759 reminds us that we can, if that's what's available, use the testimony of Zoroastrians and other people of scriptural religions. I don't mean New Age scriptures. I mean scriptures based on who were or could have been prophets, the Christians and the Jews. And, you can't tell the words of the rabbis and the Paul's followers and from, there's a lot of mix up there. So, but you can take their word if that's what's available. But you should try to find witnesses when you think you're going to die. And you really should not live too long as an adult without having some sort of will around. If my content's still up, I've obviously made these statements to the effect that of how things will be carried out. 12,783 reminds of the prayer direction. And the prayer direction used to be, in this era, it used to be towards Jerusalem. And God said, well, now the final direction is towards Mecca. But Al-Bara made a will saying that place him facing the direction that Muhammad faced. It wasn't about Jerusalem, it wasn't about Mecca, it was about whatever direction. And so he was buried facing Jerusalem. I think I might have repeated some of the numbers, but 12,805 regards that if a Zoroastrian, and you could say other people of other paths, write a will like, oh, I'm going to take care of the poor, well, it's to be distributed among the poor of their own group, their own faith group. Or if that's not known, it becomes a general thing, not specific to the Muslimin. So somebody who made that judgment was ordered to take it back and, make up for that in that respect. 12,897 talks about the division of Abraham in tenths on each of the mountains. So if it's not known the exactness of somebody that from their third, they're letting somebody have a portion, they'll have a tenth. 12,974. In terms of afterlife and in terms of what's going to be done with the remains and all that, when you've died, you're supposed to take care of your own affairs here. And, that extends to one's own hero deeds. There's no vicarious reliance. You can't refer to Imam Hussein and Ali and all that other stuff. You can't refer to Muhammad. You can't refer to any of the other prophets. Certainly believing and acknowledging the hero deeds of the past, that's perfectly fine. I've had ancestors that fought in wars and that sort of stuff. Now, I'm not completely sure about all of that, but, there, as I'm saying, there are better examples, but still, that doesn't count for you. You have got to do your own hero deeds. You got to provide for your own afterlife. 12,988 reminds us of the revelation of God and that it is ignorance to say that women should be denied their inheritance. We don't refer to a pre-Islamic age in Islam. We refer to a period of ignorance. Now, there's general ignorance that appears between prophets, you could say. A person or a nation or a group of people's specific period of ignorance in another sense is in terms of a group. But